My Audi R8 has been stuck, broken down in this garage for the last couple of years now, and it's because of the clutch pedal. When you push it down, it just sticks to the floor. And when this happens, you either got a problem in one of two places. The first is with your clutch master cylinder, which is usually located somewhere behind the clutch pedal itself, probably in the interior. If this isn't it, then it's got to be your clutch slave cylinder, which is located inside your transmission, which is underneath this whole entire mess. The whole back half of the car would have to come out, pull the transmission out, and well, it'd be a pretty big job, especially in this very small garage. And to figure out which one of these is the problem, you can start simply by looking. Right now I'm underneath the back half of the Audi R8, right where the transmission would be, and if our slave cylinder was leaking, you'd think there'd be a puddle under the car. Everything is nice and clean, but then again there's this huge splash shield that covers the entire bottom of the car. So now if a problem was actually with the master cylinder itself, you would look at the clutch and now besides looking for a puddle, I really don't know how you would diagnose the difference between a bad master or slave cylinder in this case. Our reservoir is definitely low here, so our fluid must be going somewhere. Either way, a really smart mechanic once told me that if you own an old Audi, you should always get a Porsche so you'll actually have something to drive. And in following his advice, I didn't realize I was buying one of the most unreliable 911s ever made. This GT3 was plagued with problems from the day it arrived into the country. It had a major engine recall as a new car. This one and all the other early arrival GT3s were put on a stop sale because of it. The problem here is that they were already pre-sold, so the owners had to wait until a solution was developed, which ended up being a new engine to be installed in a brand new Porsche by the dealership. Later on, these replacement engines were still problematic to the point where their engine warranties were extended to 100,000 miles. At the very least, Porsche's constant attention gave them some good press, which kind of swept these issues under the rug, and it did provide a bit of assurance to these cars' now reluctant owners. And getting that little bit of assurance up front can end up being huge. I think it's something we all tend to look for, especially when buying a car, really just doing anything in general. A little bit of assurance is a big reason I chose to purchase life insurance through Ethos. It's really important to me because I have a lot of projects going on at once that span well outside the garage, and if anything were to happen, I'd want my family to feel secure in finishing these up. Now, getting life insurance can seem to be a bit of a hassle, but with Ethos, they've streamlined the whole process, making it 100% online. It's really fast and only took me as little as 10 minutes to get a real quote, with no special medical exams or blood tests. Just answer a few simple health questions and you can get coverage in minutes. It's very affordable. My quote came in around the price of a gallon of gas per day. And my beneficiaries could spend the payout on anything. In this case, I think it would help my wife be able to hire the auction to move a lot of these cars along, but maintain the more important ones while staying on top of our mortgage and other bills. Applying is very easy. To get your free life insurance quote through Ethos, just scan the QR code or hit that link down in the description. Now, I'd like to give a huge thanks to Ethos for sponsoring this video. Now, when it comes to any car repair, the path of least resistance is the one to take, and since replacing the master cylinder doesn't require removal of the transmission, and because the part itself costs about a third that of the slave cylinder, I figure we'll start by replacing it and see if it brings back our clutch pedal. In all the cars I've worked on, your master cylinder is fed by brake fluid, and in order to get to anything, including the brake fluid reservoir in the front area here, you need to take this front trunk trim off. Luckily, I had it off because I replaced the battery right before the clutch went out. And sometimes there's two separate reservoirs, one just for clutch fluid in manual transmission cars, but here I'm only seeing this guy. And if we take a little bit of a closer look, you can look at the lines that come off of it. These hard lines go down into the ABS block here, but then if you look lower at this corrugated line, that goes into the firewall, and that is definitely going to be the source of the fluid for our master cylinder. You can see it's a little bit wet around there, and that's because this line literally just pops right out of place and then starts immediately leaking brake fluid. So if we hold it up like this, and then just slip this water bottle over it and then kind of pop it like that. And then on the inside, we basically need to get behind that clutch pedal. I'm assuming the pedal itself has to come out. So let's just remove everything in the way of it. Oh, there it goes. That's it, just 2 pieces of trim out of the way, and the second I peeled back the carpet, I could feel a little bit of oily brake fluid that had leaked into the footwell area, which is actually a good sign that our problem is with the master cylinder and not somewhere inside the transmission. Now, the only other thing we could see here is the fluid line. I'm guessing it's what brings the brake fluid from the master to the slave cylinder. So it would make sense that this line runs straight to our problem area upward, which is really a problem because you can't see any of it. There's just this little opening, which you could hardly fit a few fingers in. If we take a look at our replacement part, there's 2 things that are going to need to be removed from the master cylinder before it comes out of the car. One is the fluid line, and the other is an electrical connector. Now, I've got a scope camera in this area, and you can see the clip holding the fluid line in. So I went in with a flat head and popped it off. It was pretty straightforward, but the electrical connector was a totally different story. If you ever worked on a Volkswagen or Audi, you probably already know how difficult some of these wiring connectors can be to release. I mean, you have to push them so hard, and it made me wonder, like, how are they doing this at the dealership with such limited space? Because I messed around in there with a screwdriver for a couple hours and got nowhere. So I went online and I was able to find the workshop manual for the manual transmission in this first generation R8, and it does show a special tool that they use, which basically just looks like an Allen key. It's just a right angle. So I went and grabbed an Allen key, I tried it again, and again was very unsuccessful. Now, the good news is this special tool, if you find it online, it's really pretty cheap, but it does take a couple days to show up. It was like 15 bucks. I got it, and I thought that this would be the magic solution. And well, again, I miserably failed. I just couldn't get it in there. You're laying on your back in this floor area. Everything hurts. You're using one hand for a scope, one hand for the tool, and just there's no room to get anything done. At this point, I really felt like I had run out of options. And well, I went and asked my neighbor if they would help. She was outside watering her yard. And while my neighbor is a bit thick, she's a lot smaller than me and has much smaller hands. And I gotta tell you, this couldn't have worked out any better. After showing her exactly how the tool worked underneath the hood of the car, she got in the footwell area, went to work, and it took her a little bit of time, 10, 15 minutes. She had one hand on the scope camera, one hand on the tool, and she goes, I got it. I'm like, great. She goes, oh, wait, it slipped. I go, what do you mean it slipped? She goes, well, I can get the tool in the clip, but I don't have a free hand to pull the clip open. I go, what do you want me to do? And she goes, well, get in here. Just get the wire out of the way. And while it was kind of awkward getting in the missionary position with my neighbor, the good news here is that the clip was finally released. Come on. Oh, there we go. All right. All right. With the clutch pedal out of the car, you can see exactly how this master cylinder works. Here is the cylinder itself, and here's where it's fed with that brake fluid or hydraulic fluid from the reservoir. When you push the pedal in, the piston goes into the cylinder here, creating pressure, and it takes that fluid and moves it down through a hydraulic line that's in the car and goes all the way to the transmission where the slave cylinder is. When the pedal is in, the clutch is disengaged so you can shift gears, but whenever you release it, now that power is being sent from the transmission to your drive wheels and moving the car. Now, the reason our master cylinder has likely failed is because there's seals all inside here to keep that hydraulic fluid in, which keeps the pressure, and likely one of those seals is just worn from age and use. I think to remove this master cylinder, all you do, you clock it that way, and it should just come out. Well, it didn't just come out. There was a little bit more to it. There's a plastic clip that holds it in place inside the clutch bracket. And of course, the shop manual tells you to use another special tool, which just looks like a wide mouth pliers. I tried pushing this clip in, but it wasn't very easy. So here's a quick and easy workaround. Just take a flathead screwdriver and wedge it on the side of the clip here and work it back and forth. Very easily, this undid the clip on either side and it popped right out of place. So after doing this a few times, there's a couple things that need to be done all in the right order here. First of all, your spring has to be put in place, and then that just rests in that little notch there. And then the retractable piston here has to be pulled most of the way out with the clip on the end. Now, we're going to get started and we're going to be very, very careful, but here's a really important part. I'm going to take this screwdriver, I'm going to push against the piston. See, it's wanting to just put the clip in there without the ball head in, and then it gets stuck in, and then we're back to fishing it out. So we want to get this slotted in and it needs to be held in without A, pinching your fingers, and B, the plunger can't go in all the way because it will just grab the clip. So I'm going to push against it. It's still in, it's still in, it's still in. And then we're going to use that just little gap there to hopefully clip it. And if this pulls out, there we go. Now with our clutch pedal mounted back in the car, I've left the electrical harness undone until the very end in case something isn't right and we have to take the pedal back out. Then I hooked back up our brake fluid line from the outside of the car and then on the inside of the car. And then I added a bit of brake fluid to the reservoir. Now we just got to bring some pressure back into this pedal. You can feel it right in here. Look at that, it's coming back a little bit. Coming back a little bit. We still got a good ways to go, but we're getting some pressure. We're getting a clutch back here. Oh my goodness, do we have a clutch back? I think we got a clutch. All right, we've got a clutch and we've got some clutch pressure. I gave this car like a 15-minute break and went and pushed the clutch back in. The pedal returns on its own like it should, and that's important because if we messed up the repair or didn't attach one of the fluid lines properly, well, in theory, it would let more air in and then it wouldn't hold pressure. So that should be good. Now, the pedal is still a bit spongy, and that's because we did introduce some air into the system when we installed a new part. We're going to take care of that in a moment. But at this point, this car is ready to test. We should be able to get it into gear. We should be able to start it. But actually, in order to start it, we've got to hook back up that electrical connector because that's a clutch position sensor, and the clutch needs to be pushed in before the car will start. Right here is the final part that scares me the most. The clip is now connected. Clutch pedal in. Now I'm going to pump this clutch pedal a few times to make sure. Go. Perfect. We're in reverse. To get to the bleeder on this transmission, supposedly it's on the top. And so it should be somewhere right underneath the airbox here, which comes out with just a few screws. This little gap under the airbox is plenty enough room to get to our bleeder. That fitting on the transmission is an 8mm. I went and cracked it loose. I've got it hooked up to this pneumatic brake bleeder here. It's on the fitting. Let's see if it pulls the fluid out. All right. And we'll make our way into the car and see if our clutch pedal feels normal on the first push. There's really not a lot of fluid that's in the line for the clutch, so you don't need to bleed a lot. Let's see. Yeah, it feels much better on the first push. It feels like it should. I gotta admit, I really struggle with this repair. Every step of the process seems easy if you just think about it, but working in that tiny space was a real pain. All things do happen for a reason, though. You ever heard someone say, "I'd like to have a word with the engineer that designed that"? Well, it started that way, but now I feel more like I'd like to shake the hand of the engineer that designed that. This Audi R8 means a lot to me. It was the first really nice car that I ever bought, and even though it was salvage, with a major crack in its frame, working through each repair to make it great again was one of my most memorable life experiences. Before its clutch went out, I regularly drove and enjoyed this car, and even though it broke, and fixing this hydraulic issue frustrated the heck out of me, it's brought me joy in ways I could have never imagined. I am so thrilled that it's back in business, but now I can't help but feel really bad for the guys that take these cars to the dealers to get them fixed. Not only are they getting ripped off, just think about all the action that they're missing out on.